I'm Khalida Rashid and I live in Unley. I have lived in Unley since 1956 and I've seen lots of changes in that time, yes. I lived in the Riverland, had my education mostly there, and I started school as a 5-year-old in the Renmark West, as they called it then. And I could only speak Arabic because that's what we spoke at home. But, you know, as a child, you soon learn the other languages around you. And my father wanted us to maintain our language, so we spoke it at home. But as a teenager, then later on, I thought, no, I want to be Australian. I want to be part of the big community. Do I look cool and all that? So I didn't keep at it, but I still maintain it to a degree. I still feel very much attached to the Lebanese culture. I mean, we've lived it all our lives. You participate in all the community events that are significant. We may not necessarily like the current programs that are going on with economic things in our country. We probably, from afar, feel like we'd like to be able to change things over there, but we've gone through a period of time, particularly Lebanon has gone through a long period of time of having different occupations of other people there. In fact, when my father-in-law came to Australia, he travelled on a Syrian passport, not a Lebanese one. That was when the Ottoman Empire had the control of all that Middle Eastern part of the world. The Ottomans stayed in Lebanon and all the surrounding areas, what they called Syria then, for 400 years. And so it wasn't until the end of World War I, that the French and the British had some intervention into the way the Turks were there, and they were banished from that area then. And then French came in, the Vichy French, which didn't really go all too well at the time. And then the British also interfered, and then it was about the 1943 that after that long duration of negotiations between all the people that lived in those areas, that it became Lebanon. So it wasn't declared until 1943 that Lebanon got its independence, really. See, the Ottomans were very oppressive. They weren't allowing the people to live comfortably, and so the reason for migration mostly was that people had to get away to earn some money to send back to their families so they could survive. So that's really why a lot of the young men, like my father-in-law and my own father, migrated, because they wanted to earn money to send back to their families. You know, my boys have travelled overseas. They've been to Lebanon. They travel widely, much more widely than we ever did, but they've touched base with their cultures there, and they love the rituals and things that we have here now. They participate. They didn't maintain the language, though. I think it was our fault more than anything else, because we went through a period of time when it was considered, you know, not very polite to speak your language in public. And we had a business, so we knew that we had to run the business and, you know, be able to engage with our customers. So we didn't maintain the language very much in front of the children. At school, there were different times when, you know, you might have been bullied or, you know, isolated a bit because of your looks, so you were darker and, you know, whatever. Yeah, those sorts of things did happen. I mean, as a primary school kid myself, I remember going to Berry Primary School. At that time, there were lots of Greek and Italian migrants in the school as well, and there were Aboriginal children attending, and we tended to be the minority groups that grouped together. But, you know, you played sport, you got involved, it all broke it down eventually, you know. There wasn't very much difference then. Most schools now have very diverse populations. It'd be very uncommon for there to be a school which didn't have a number of different cultural groups in it. And so it's become part of the curriculum anyway to acknowledge that diversity that's there. Young ones are getting a lot more interested in their whole heritage backgrounds. One of the things my husband did a lot of when he was still very engaged in the community, because he became what we call a sheikh in the community, and he was actually then given the responsibilities of having running marriage ceremonies and being person that, organised the funerals and so on. And during that period of his time, he actually wanted to go collect the information about all the families we had here and do a little bit of a family tree for them. So we're actually trying to digitise all that now so the families can access them. So in that way, we have, I guess, a lot more information now for the young people to access, and there's a lot more interest, I think, through even education, because I did family trees with my classroom as a practice that every child would be able to get up and say, oh, my mother and my grandparents or whatever, where they came from and so on. So that was also part of my cultural inclusivity, yeah. So I've always been grateful that my parents migrated to Australia, really. That was one of the issues that also affected the migration. When my in-laws and my parents came to Australia, they travelled without Lebanese identity, really, because of the White Australia policy. You could not get naturalisation if you had Asiatic backgrounds. That's what it was classed at that particular point. So when, it became easier to get naturalisation, they grabbed it. Once they could, live here and buy property and, settle with their family and have that permanency, they really valued the fact that Australia was offering education and those, different experiences, newer experiences for their families. And a lot of our youngsters did go on and get good professional backgrounds. So it was a land of opportunity. They saw it as a land of opportunity and they loved it. Yeah. But the photos that I have here were the ones that my father-in-law would have brought back with him probably when he came. And they show Lebanon as he left it as a young man. And when I went back, of course, things had modernised enormously. I've been a couple of times. The first time I went was just after the end of the Civil War, and it hadn't changed greatly. But then when I went back in 2018, I realised just how much it had changed and become very much more modernised. And there were buildings just sprouting up everywhere. The acceleration of development had gone phenomenally ahead. But when you look at this and then you compare the buildings as they are now, you realise just how difficult it must have been. They had to build these homes themselves, really, and they used stone, so they had to quarry the stone and everything, shape it to the shapes they wanted, and they'd have to cut these walls to build the walls themselves. And the reason you can see these animals around is because the buildings were often elevated to be 2 or 3 levels high, and the very bottom was for where the animals would be housed in winter. So they would, provide areas for animals to be sheltered, and then when modern times came along, those lower building parts have now become apartments. My particular family home in Bate Mary, my brother has refurbished it and done a lot of work on it, and it's turned out to be quite beautiful. I should really have brought some modern photos, but it's really turned out to be quite lovely. And this is my father-in-law as a young man, and he was very enterprising because when he was in Australia, he and his brother first of all worked at Port Pirie smelters. But then my father-in-law's brother got very sick in the smelters. So my father-in-law went and lived in Moonta and started a bike shop. And that's him there. And it was quite successful. And that's me as a young child and my brother. And and it was important. Families didn't have all the cameras and equipment that you have now. So they would take these photos. I think that Australia's been enriched by having the multiculturalism. There's no doubt about it. But we see so much, don't we, in the diversity in our TV programs and so forth now. We just saw NAIDOC in nominations last night, and I was quite, very much inspired by what I heard last night. Earlier on, I think the British had a very strong control over everything, but since different waves of migration, I think definitely things have been enriched in Australia. So I'm really grateful to be part of all of that, really, quite frankly, to be able to celebrate Lebanese background with all the other groups, yeah.